We are here, of course, in the wake of the Kansas City Chiefs absolutely throttling the New Orleans Saints on the way to their fifth victory of the young 2024 season. We have headlines, big ideas, offensive MVP, defensive MVP, and game ball to get into, and a little bit of a Mahomes monologue, but not anything as in-depth this week as I have been doing. Now, starting with the headlines, let's start here. Car wrecked. The Kansas City Chiefs have the number of Derek Carr. There seems to be nothing that Derek Carr can do for working the livelong day in order to beat the Kansas City Chiefs. He just can't get that done. You have to almost feel sorry for him, except for the fact that he was, of course, a Raider. Now, this is... I don't know how to take this victory on this standpoint from this front. The New Orleans Saints started the season 2-0. They were the hottest team in football, scoring the mostest points and having the bestest defense. Now, since that time, things have been decidedly different for the Saints. I am not sure in 5 or 6 weeks whether this will be more of a strong win for the Kansas City Chiefs or just an embarrassing loss for the Saints. I am inclined to believe, looking around the NFL, that the Chiefs may not be a super team, but they are a very good team. They are a very solid team, even if they do have weaknesses, and the Saints may be just a pretty good team. The number 2 headline here in the hunt for the 1 seed. Kareem Hunt, if this is going to be the Kareem Hunt that the Kansas City Chiefs have, is going to make this team very difficult with which to contend. Kareem Hunt is exactly the type of runner that this team has been begging for the past few seasons. If you look at the way this offensive line is constructed, they are big, strong, rough, rowdy type of guys, with the exception of Joe Thuney, but Joe Thuney is elite in the passing game. He's a very good angle blocker as far as the running game is concerned, but all 4 of the other, well, Juwan Taylor's an interesting case, but we'll say 3. Wanye Morris, Creed Humphrey, and Trey Smith, very big, strong, powerful blockers built for a power running game. Hopefully, we get Kingsley Suamataia on that right side in the next couple of weeks, but Kareem Hunt is exactly the type of runner that thrives behind that type of offensive line, and we can't, in my opinion, underestimate the fact that Kareem Hunt being on the same team with Carson Steele may prove to be extremely profitable to Carson Steele moving forward. If you could look at Carson Steele's build and body type and say, I want you to run like a specific running back in the NFL, it would be Kareem Hunt. It would not be Derrick Henry. He does not have all of the talent that Derrick Henry has. But Carson Steele, in my opinion, could be a decent facsimile of Kareem Hunt. The number 3 headline here, some good juju. Good juju for the Kansas City Chiefs. Good vibes, positive vibes. Good Juju Smith-Schuster going off the hook, off the chain, off the rack, out of pocket, whatever you want to say, that Juju Smith-Schuster did on Monday night, I'll allow it. An absolutely mind-boggling performance from the 27-year-old wide receiver. The number 4 headline here stars out, Chiefs get team win. The Chiefs were without 2, obviously, number 1 wide receivers, prospective number 1 wide receivers on this roster, and their number 1 running back. All 3 of those players, seemingly at this point, done for the season, though the latest I have on Rashee Rice says 4 months. I guess hypothetically that would put him back for the Super Bowl. I don't really know the math there, how that's going to work, but this was a team win, and we're going to get into this with the defensive game ball here, but this was an all-around team win. Now, the big ideas the undefeated, in addition to being the title of an Ernest Hemingway short story, the Chiefs are 5-0. They are up 2 games on everyone in the conference besides the 4-1 Texans. I repeat that. The Kansas City Chiefs, just 5 weeks into the season, are 2 games up on everyone in the conference that doesn't play in Houston. They are one of 2 undefeated teams in the entire NFL with the Vikings. They are one of just 15 teams above 500. And if anyone told you, if I told you this, if anyone told you this in August, that in week 5 of the 2024 season, Juju Smith-Schuster would lead your team in receiving, Kareem Hunt would have 100 yards rushing for the Kansas City Chiefs, Mecole Hardman and Jody Fortson would both pop up on the stat sheet, and Mahomes would have 6 touchdowns and 6 interceptions on the season. If anyone had told you that in August, here's how I'll say it. If I had told you that in August, you would have told me you were unsubscribing. I would have sounded like a raving lunatic. This is what we are in here in the 8th day of October. So this season is obviously going to get a little bit weirder. We don't know in what direction, but we hope that it will be for the positive with the Kansas City Chiefs. The number 2 thing here under Big Ideas, Mahomes and interceptions, they keep on a-coming. Now, obviously, this one was not quite his fault, as Juju Smith-Schuster did his best Kadarius Toney impression for Halloween coming up, but it is a little bit troubling, we have to admit. Was it 2020 that Mahomes had like 8 interceptions on the entire season, something like that? So to have 6 through the first 5 games is troubling. But other than that, it was a fairly clean night for Patrick Mahomes, with even a little bit of magic mixed in, even if that spinning throw did not quite hit home because someone was not paying the right amount of attention. You have to be paying close attention if Patrick Mahomes is on the field. Now, here's the last thing in the big ideas category for this video. Imagine the rage bubbling in your guts if you are part of the greater NFL fandom. You are a part of the fandom of any NFL team that's not playing in Kansas City, Missouri, and you have to watch Juju Smith-Schuster pop off for 130 yards because the Chiefs' number 1 and number 2 wide receivers were out. The entirety of the NFL community was tuning into that Monday night game in order to watch the Kansas City Chiefs lose. They thought that was almost a sure thing. They thought Patrick Mahomes was going to struggle for the entirety of the season, being down 3 targets now, if you're including Isaiah Pacheco in the targets category, and seemingly it would have been 4 because Mecole Hardman was questionable leading into that game. It was not to be. The Kansas City Chiefs did win. The Kansas City Chiefs did look the best they have looked all season. The Kansas City Chiefs did completely dominate the team that had been the most impressive team in all of football for the first 2 weeks of this NFL season. Imagine the rage gurgling inside you if you were tuning in to watch the Saints win and you were suddenly flashed back to all of the ghosts of Kansas City Chiefs past. You have Kareem Hunt going over 100 yards. You have Juju Smith-Schuster going for 130, having a 50-yard reception. A guy named Jody Fortson that was... Jody Fortson last night with, 1 reception, 5 yards. Probably that's 10% of his career receiving totals. I'm going a little off the ledge there, but it's not an insignificant amount of Jody Fortson's career receiving yardage right? That one reception for 5 yards means something in the Jody Fortson career, the annals of Jody Fortson in the NFL. Offensive MVP goes to Kareem Hunt. 27 carries, 102 yards, 1 touchdown, and a 3.8 yard average. A 1 reception and 15 yards added there as well. With the power running game and the threat out of the backfield, the offense just moved better for the Kansas City Chiefs. The 460 yards of offense for this Chiefs team last night is the most this season. I think we all probably intuited that, but you have to go all the way back to October 22nd of 2023 against the Chargers to find a better performance than this, as the Chiefs gained 483 yards in the 31-17 win then. They topped 400 yards just 3 times last year, 401 versus the Jets, 456 versus the Bears, and they were close with 399 yards versus the Jaguars. But with this power running game in effect for the Kansas City Chiefs, if this is the way this team is going to look moving forward, I expect they will have more than 3 400-yard performances this year, because that offense just looked smooth as butter last night. And I am of the opinion that the Kansas City Chiefs are going to do something to add to their wide receiver room, whether that be plucking someone off of a practice squad, whether that is signing someone off the street, whether that is making a trade for someone. I don't know what it's going to be. I believe they will make a move for a wide receiver, especially as we are getting news today that Rashee Rice is probably out a minimum of 4 months with the surgery that he ended up having. The defensive MVP, you're going to look at the screen there and say, Chamari Connor, what did he do? What a wild selection when he only had 3 tackles on the evening. Nick Bolton, Hit Stick Nick, had 11 tackles. Watson had 5 and really looked solid at that other cornerback spot. Brian Cook had an interception, gave up a touchdown, but had an interception as well. And Tershawn Wharton had the lone sack on Derek Carr. Why pick Chamari Connor? Why pick Chamari Connor for what I believe is the 3rd time this season so far? Well, I'll tell you. The defense is the same way that the offense just looks better when Kareem Hunt is on the field. They look like they can move the ball. They look like the defense has to respect the run. And regardless of whether or not they're respecting the run, Kareem Hunt's going to put his face mask between someone's numbers and ruin their evening. That is what Kareem Hunt does for the offense. The same thing that Chamari Connor seems to do for the defense. It just seems to me, and I don't have the numbers to back this up right now, I am looking at what I would do to get the numbers, so if you have any ideas, let me know. The defense looks to be much more competent with Chamari Connor on the field. Running backs out of the backfield don't seem to get more than 3 yards upfield. The running game in general seems that running backs are having to run uphill against the defense. It seems to me that the same way that Kareem Hunt's presence on the offense evens everything out and makes them run so much more smoothly, Chamari Connor does that for the defense. I don't have the numbers to back that up. I don't have the stats to be able to point to. Just from the eye test, it seems that way to me. Obviously, the game ball here goes to Juju Smith-Schuster. Juju Smith-Schuster, 8 targets, 7 receptions, 130 yards, an 18.6-yard average for Juju Smith-Schuster on the evening. Of course, his rating when targeted suffered. His rating when targeted was a 79.2, because that's what happens when you hand a football to Colin Saunders. So Juju Smith-Schuster with the game ball here. If this is the Juju Smith-Schuster that is going to be playing for the Kansas City Chiefs moving forward, everything's going to be all right. Every little thing is going to be all right. This Juju Smith-Schuster, so here, I have the same questions about Juju Smith-Schuster that I have about Kareem Hunt. These are guys that are getting up there in age. These are guys who have had off seasons in the past. These are guys that I would worry about having very heavy workloads on a week-to-week basis. Although, I said that coming into this week about Kareem Hunt. I said, what is he going to look like the week after taking a few brutal hits? What is he going to look like the week after leveling players on the defensive side of the ball? And he came out and looked even stronger than he did last week. So the Kansas City Chiefs moving into their bye week with a couple of, and look, I say they're aging players. Neither of them is particularly old. Certainly they're not Travis Kelce with the gray beard, but they are players who have had... It's interesting in the NFL because rarely do guys come back. Rarely do guys come back and have career years. Rarely do guys come back several times and have good seasons. Juju Smith-Schuster looked as if he had been washed up in Pittsburgh, came to Kansas City, reclaimed his career, moved on after one season for some pretty big money in New England, and quickly plummeted. Was cut. Despite the fact that New England invested a pretty good deal of money in him, they went, and they do not have a good offense. One of the worst teams in football. They went ahead and cut him, just cut ties with him. You're not good enough to play here on one of the worst teams in the NFL. They cut him. He's come back to Kansas City and already has a 130-yard game. Now, I want to look up something real quick because I was not prepared to make this talking point. He has 147 yards on the season thus far. Last season for New England, he had 260. The entire year, 260. So whatever it is that is happening for these guys, Kareem Hunt and Juju Smith-Schuster in Kansas City, wah-wah-wooey, it seems to be working. Now, moving on to the Mahomes dialogue, I did not take the moment to type anything out because I don't know exactly where I want to go with this talking point. Here's the thing. Patrick Mahomes had the best game of his season. He went 28 of 39, 331 yards, still no touchdowns, and an interception, giving him an 86.6 rating for the game. Now, is this a particularly impressive performance from Patrick Mahomes? No. No, it is not. It was enough to win. It's been enough to win. And one of the confounding things that we see from Patrick Mahomes, it seems time and time again, is that when he gets his back against the wall, he comes out swinging. It's not always pretty, but pretty much always, it's a win. Pretty much always, it's a win. We saw this last season when the playoffs started and sudden death was suddenly a thing, where if you do not win, if you lose, you go home. All of a sudden, the entire offense moves more smoothly. Here we have the Kansas City Chiefs with their back up against the wall. 3 big-time playmakers not coming through and getting injured for the Kansas City Chiefs. 3 big-time playmakers. Number 1 and number 2 wide receiver, no matter what order you want to list them in, suddenly gone. Number 1 running back, suddenly gone. Doesn't matter. Never the matter. Patrick Mahomes is going to go out there and win. He's going to throw the football to Juju Smith-Schuster to the tune of 130 yards, which is basically exactly half of his entire season last year for the Patriots in a single game. Patrick Mahomes is going to walk out there and give Mecole Hardman his best game in meaningful football in 2 years. Patrick Mahomes is going to trot out there with Kareem Hunt, a guy who has been semi-retired from the NFL like 2 or 3 times now, depending on how you want to look at things, and he's going to get him 102 yards and a reception. Patrick Mahomes is going to go out there with a guy like Justin Watson and a guy like Sky Moore, who are both going to get snaps for the offense, but neither of them is going to get a single target. You don't have to have targets. You can just be on the field, and Patrick Mahomes will ignore you. Patrick Mahomes went out there with this moribund cast of players and had the most dominant win the Kansas City Chiefs have had in quite a while during the regular season. So I don't know what to say at this point. The Kansas City Chiefs are 5-0. They have 12 games to win 5. They have 12 attempts to win 5 games that will probably get them in the postseason. This is where they become dangerous. Why? Because they get to experiment. Because they get to say, hey, Xavier Worthy, do you think you can do these crossing routes? Let's figure it out. Mahomes still hasn't gotten the timing down with Xavier Worthy. If he had, last night would have been a whole lot worse for the New Orleans Saints. Maybe, just maybe, they walk out there and say, hey, McCole, do you think you can run 5-yard in routes? And McCole says, probably not consistently, but they'll go ahead and try it anyway. And if he can figure it out, now the Chiefs have several wide receivers who can do several things, even if none of them can do everything. All Patrick Mahomes has to have is role players. If he has role players that will play their roles, then he can win the Super Bowl any given year. That's all I have for this video. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other Kansas City Chiefs fans. And if you find yourself here by chance but not design, the Chiefs are the only thing I talk about on this channel, dropping multiple videos every single week, and I hope to have you back for the next one.